Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp, and those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
Why do you lock yourself up in these chains? No one can change your life except for you. Don't ever let anyone step all over you. Just open your heart and your mind. Is it really fair to feel this way inside? Turn around and say goodbye. Until then, baby, are you gonna let him hold you down and make you cry? Don't you know, things can change, things will go your way if you hold on for one more day. Can you hold on for one more day? Things will go your way. Hold on for one more day.
If you are of a certain vintage, it may sound jarring to you, as it does me. That 1990 was 35 years ago. It was yesterday, okay? But really, on this day, 35 years ago, in 1990, Wilson Phillips was number one on the U.S. music charts with that song right there, Hold On. What makes it even more notable, not just that Wilson Phillips took Hold On to number one on this day in 1990, but it was exactly 25 years earlier, exactly 25 years earlier, to the day that Wendy and Carney's father, Beach Boy Brian Wilson, had been at number one with Help Me, Rhonda. So you go back to 65, and it's Help Me, Rhonda. And then 1990, it is Wilson Phillips and Hold On at number one on the charts. It is Monday, the 9th of June. Welcome to the program. How about that weekend? Tell me how long we were waiting for a weekend like that. Exactly. All year, I might argue. All ding-dang year, we waited for the weather that we got, and it was terrific. It was a beautiful Sunday to be in downtown Kitchener celebrating the legendary entertainer, Eric Traplin. Hundreds turned out, lots of fun for all. And of course, Eric puts on a little performance, because what else would a celebration of Eric Traplin be without a performance from the man himself? And I hate to say I told you so, but didn't I tell you so? Were you listening to our buddy Josh Gorey on All News Mornings today with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas? Josh reporting on the monthly weather summary from the E.D. Soulis station at the University of Waterloo. I'm sorry, but we are being gaslit. I told you they would come up with some kind of cockamamie rationale that May was some sort of normal weather month, average weather month. It was anything but. I have proof. I talked to my neighbors last night. We do that on the street where I live. Will and Jean were out for their evening walk, and we chatted for a little bit, and we talked about how nice the weather had been all weekend. And Jean looked at me and said, it's about time after that rotten May. I don't care what the statistics say. It was a rotten month of weather last month, but June did a good job trying to start making up for it with that beautiful weather we had this weekend. One more thing I just want to make sure that I've got straight as we start our time together here on the show this week. 13-year-old boy, emphasis on boy, targeted shooting in Kitchener late last week. 13-year-old arrested, okay? And then targeted shooting last night in the Galt area of Cambridge. We got this right now. 13-year-old boy on Friday, and no arrests yet, but another targeted shooting in the Galt area of Cambridge early last evening. Okay, just as long as we know where the guns are being directed and whether or not they are targeted right now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
All right, let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Number 1, regional police continue to investigate that aforementioned shooting last night in the Galt area of Cambridge. Police were called to the home on Roseview Avenue around 6:30 last evening after reports shots had been fired into the home. Police say it was a targeted incident, but no arrests have been made. Number 2, Canada appears ready to make its largest increase in defense spending since the Second World War. Sources say Prime Minister Carney will make the announcement at a speech this morning in Toronto. The new plan will reportedly allow Canada to meet its 2% NATO spending target next year and exceed it in future years. The new spending will include higher pay for members of the Canadian Armed Forces, new aircraft, armed vehicles and ammunition, and new drones and sensors to monitor the sea floor and the Arctic. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning. Thousands of protesters took to the street in Los Angeles yesterday in response to President Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard against Governor Gavin Newsom's wishes. The demonstrations centered on a cluster of federal buildings, including a detention center, where immigrants arrested on Friday were taken.
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
As the protests swelled yesterday, demonstrators blocked a freeway entrance, set self-driving cars on fire, and threw objects, including concrete and electric scooters, at law enforcement officers and vehicles. Number 4, Canadian Armed Forces were deployed over the weekend to help evacuate a northwestern Ontario First Nation as wildfires rapidly spread in the region. The Ontario government said Sunday that the Red Lake 12 wildfire near Deer Lake First Nation is out of control and more than 1,500 square kilometers in size. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this Monday morning. Back-to-back weekend wins for your Kitchener Panthers, who beat the Guelph Royals 9-4 on Saturday and 4-0 yesterday. The wins bring Kitchener back to 500 on the season at 5-5. Good for a 5th-place tie with Toronto and 3.5 games back of league-leading Welland. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Quick break. I took advantage of the weekend weather. So nice. And I got out on the motorcycle and I went to the road that might be the epicenter for all that is wrong with our new speed zones in this region. If you haven't driven it for yourself, let me tell you what it's like on this particular road in Woolwich Township. That's coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I feel like I spent so much time complaining about the weather in May that the least I can do is celebrate again. It's only 16 minutes into the show, and already again, I want to talk about how beautiful the weather was this weekend. And I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that this weekend also provided me the first opportunity of this spring to get out on my motorcycle. I am such a lousy rider these days. I don't think I even belong in the club. Finally got around, though, to getting out, enjoying some time on the road in the beautiful rural settings that our region has to offer. And so it came to pass that I found myself in and around the Cross Hill area and headed back towards St. Clements, Heidelberg, St. Jacobs, etc. So I'm on Lobsinger Line. So let me take you through Lobsinger Line, again, from the one end of it at Cross Hill and coming back towards Waterloo. Of course, Lobsinger Line is an 80 zone. And as you get to St. Clements, as you would expect on a rural road when you approach a town and go through a town, the speed limit will drop to 50. No problem. Then back up to 80 you go when you're outside the town limits, and it will drop back down again to 50 when you get to Heidelberg. But that's where things get really interesting. So now you're in Heidelberg, and the limit is 50 kilometers per hour. And as you exit Heidelberg, it'll jump up to 80 again, and then it will slow down to 60, and then all the way down to 40 in a school zone or a community safety zone where the signs warn you that a municipal speed camera is coming, and then you're back up to 60, and then you're at the end of the road at King. And you can make a left into St. Jacobs or a right towards the market and head back towards the expressway. But just think, from Heidelberg to essentially the end of Lobsinger Line, you go from 50 to 60 to 80 to 40 and then back to 60. And I saw it with my own eyes, the very thing that Woolwich Township Mayor Sandy Shantz has complained about a little bit. I heard people delegating at Woolwich Township Council meetings about this very issue. Sure enough, there were 4 vehicles ahead of me and my motorcycle. And I'm out for a Saturday drive. I'm not in a hurry for anything. But the speed limit, it was very strange. 50 to 60 to 80 to, 50 to 80 to 60 to 40, back up to 60 again. That's just from Heidelberg to the end of Lobsinger Line. And the vehicle at the front, which was clearly adhering to the posted speed limits, was passed by every vehicle behind it. I guess they didn't care about the 60 or the 40 zone that they had to drive through. Look, I understand. I do. I understand what we're doing with these speed limits, these community safety zones. I know we're trying to increase road safety, reduce collisions, etc. But somewhere, somehow, somebody has just got to apply one shred. I'm begging you for one shred of common sense in this. Because what's happening on Lobsinger Line right now utterly defies common sense. Like, all I can see, truly, is somebody sitting in a cubicle at 150 Frederick Street, the headquarters of our regional government, and saying, okay, this needs a community safety zone because of the school nearby, and so we have to make it a 40. Without any thought to Heidelberg already being a 50, climbing up to 60 and then 80 and then 40. Like, you can't just put a number on a page when you're sitting at a desk somewhere. You got to go out and take a look at these things. And I don't really know what the answer is, other than, like, do you not build schools near well-traveled, busy roads? Did the roads just get too busy while the school was there? I'm not sure. That sounds like a bit of a chicken and egg argument to me. But my goodness, it just defies common sense. And if you want people to buy into what you're trying to do here, it's got to make sense. And that makes zero sense. And pity the person that was at the front of that line of vehicles that was getting passed and then passed and then passed again, all for what? Doing the speed limit along the way? It just doesn't make any sense. So don't do it from a desk, okay? When you make this community safety zone, get out there, drive it, look at it with your own eyes so that we can all maybe find a way to make it make some more sense. Nathan sends an email along these same lines to Mike at 570news.com. Just a little public service announcement that the cash grab camera is now operational on Weber Street at Sunnyside School. So that's Weber, Montgomery, between Montgomery and Franklin there. Even though there is a dedicated crossing light at the school, Nathan says, this is just ridiculous. Stop the madness. Stop it there. Stop it on Lobsinger Line. Just make it make some sense to us, if you would. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Maybe it was all part of the region's master plan. Let's roll out this aggressive speed camera program so we all forget about roundabouts. Emailing Paul sends me a message to Mike at 570news.com. How else are they going to pay for all those signs that they're installing? I presume Paul means by the fines that they will collect through the people caught by the speed cameras. There are a lot of signs being posted everywhere. Signs everywhere, sign. Blocking out the scenery. Breaking my mind. Do this, don't do that. Back to roundabouts for a moment, because I read with a good deal of joy, quite frankly, over the weekend, that there is a pilot project that the region is undertaking that is aimed to improve pedestrian safety in roundabouts. I brought this up on the show a few weeks ago now. Went back to the early spring of 2023. So more than 2 years. I really wish these things would not take as long as they take, because it was then, in the early spring of 2023, that Regional Council talked about such a pilot project to improve pedestrian safety at roundabouts. And of course, you'll remember in the years, because it's taken that long since, Herb Street, for example, and Ira Needles has been a lightning rod for the lack of pedestrian safety in roundabouts. Anyway, 2 years and a bit later, this summer we will see some improvements, but it's only a pilot project, and it's only at 3 of the dozens of roundabouts we have in the region. But Franklin Boulevard and Bishop Street in Cambridge, flashing lights will be installed there to alert drivers of pedestrians who are trying to cross at that intersection. Homer Watson Boulevard and Block Line in Kitchener, you'll see raised crosswalks. Same idea, to improve the pedestrian experience. And then at Herb and Ira Needles, the aforementioned, you'll see a combination of both, because maybe that's the most dangerous. I think pilot projects are this, right? So at 1, Franklin and Bishop, you're going to see flashing lights. At Homer Watson and Block Line, you're going to see a raised crosswalk. And at Herb and Ira Needles, it's getting the treatment of both raised crosswalk and flashing lights to improve pedestrian safety. What I really think needs to happen here is pedestrians be moved right out of the traffic circle and put the pedestrian crossing, still with the flashing light, mind you, away from the roundabout itself. But here we are, some 2 years later, after it was talked about, we're finally getting around to the pilot project at 3 roundabouts. So watch for those enhancements coming this summer. Franklin and Bishop in Cambridge, Homer Watson and Block Line in Kitchener, and Herb and Ira Needles in Waterloo. You will see these enhancements, hoping to improve the safety of the poor pedestrians. They just want to get to the other side, you know? And in those roundabouts, you're taking life and limb into your own hands when you try to do that with the volume of traffic and the way it moves through. All right, we're fast approaching 9:30, at which time we're going to get you an update in the 570 News Center. And then let's talk about GRT. Fares are going up, but service going down, at least planned expansion being stalled because ridership is declining. We'll talk about it coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. As of July the 1st, the cost of a cash fare to ride Grand River Transit will increase to $4 per ride. The cost of a monthly pass goes up 8% to $104. Neil Malcolm is the Director of Transit Services with the Region of Waterloo, joins the program this morning. Good morning, Neil.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Glad to hear it. Why the increase in fares?
Yeah, so through the region's annual plan and budget process, we evaluate fares every year. And during the 25 budget process, a decision was made to increase fares. Cash fares will go up, monthly pass, but also there's some changes in the affordable transit program. So for those that really need support in affording to take transit, there's a decrease in fares for the affordable transit program, going from $48 to $47 for a monthly pass. So some positive notes there, but also there's a rising cost to deliver the service that we're taking into account as we price the fares for the system.
How does the affordable transit program work?
So if it's based on income. So if you have a relatively low income compared to our peers here in the region of Waterloo, you can apply for the service, and when you apply, your annual income is determined if you're eligible for the service, and it's based on a market basket measure of goods. So it's a standard across the province and beyond about what's an affordable program based at. Then you apply, and then if you're eligible, you receive the Affordable Transit Pass to ride the system.
We've heard some concerns raised here on the show, Neil, from seniors in particular when it comes to that affordable transit program. They find it kind of difficult to navigate. It's a lot of information, and not many are even able to take advantage of it. Would GRT consider some sort of transit option for seniors that allows them to ride for free, even 1 or 2 days a week, like some other jurisdictions do?
Yeah, Mike, I'd start with, first of all, transit is never free. There's 4 major ways that we fund public transit: through property taxes, provincial and federal funding, advertising revenue, and fares. And, fares are an affordable way to offset the cost of providing the service. Seniors are eligible for the Affordable Transit Program. They can apply and receive the discounted fares like anyone else. Years ago, the Region of Waterloo made a decision to move away from age-based discounts and more to an affordable program, so that we're really supporting those that really need the support to get a decreased cost of the fare to ride the system. It's not based on age or any other parameter. It's really about who can afford or not afford to use the system is how we set it up right now.
When it comes to ridership, Neil, how has the changes to international students at post-secondary institutions impacted ridership at GRT? Yeah,
Mike, you'll probably remember about a year ago or early in 2024, GRT had its record ridership of all time, which was some fantastic news. We had a lot of new riders, people new in the country that were using the service, and really our highest ridership ever. Now, there's been some changes in the last year, as you're well aware, results in changes to immigration policies, reduced post-secondary enrollment, and that's had an impact on our system. Grand River Transit isn't a student-only service. We're really trying to focus on, riders across the community that want and need to use the service. But, these changes in policy around immigration, post-secondary enrollment has impacted our overall ridership, and we're seeing it right now through the first quarter of 2025.
So when you see that impact on ridership, how do you respond as a transit service?
Yeah, so really it's about, deploying our resources where they're most needed. So we're recommending some changes to Regional Council in the report tomorrow that says, we've experienced some declines in ridership in these specific areas, and we have data on who's using what route at what time. So really we can make some, in-year, some nimble adjustments to really try and say, we're busy over here. These routes are really busy. This is where the service is needed. Right now, we're not as busy over here. So let's try to make some adjustments to really use our resources optimally and not have buses that aren't being utilized out delivering service to areas that just aren't as busy right now. Move those services around, acquire new riders, and deliver the service where people are using it.
You mentioned at the outset, Neil, that when increases the likes of which are about to happen do happen, they are planned in advance. This is part of the budget cycle, so to speak. But do you recognize an impact on ridership when fares go up? Is there any correlation there?
There is, Mike, and that's part of the analysis we do. So our fares are still very affordable. If you look at the Region of Waterloo, the GRT monthly pass, even though it's rising to $104 a month, that is still an affordable cost when you compare it to car ownership, when you compare it to other peer agencies that operate transit in the GTA. It's still that monthly pass is still amongst the lowest amongst our major peers in the province. So it's still a very affordable way to get around. Even for $4 for a cash fare, and cash is maybe the more expensive way to pay, you're better off using a EasyGo fare card or a pass, because then your cost per ride is much less. But even at that cash fare, it's still a very affordable way to make your way around the region, and that includes a 120-minute transfer, so it's really an affordable way to get around.
When it comes to the numbers that you're constantly monitoring, and we've talked about the declining ridership in the first quarter of this year, is this something, Neil, that GRT monitors on a quarterly basis and makes adjustments within the budget year as needed?
Yeah, we do try to do that, Mike. So we're making some adjustments based on the first quarter of 25 right now. I want to make some really good adjustments right now to reflect the changes in ridership in different areas. So we do report quarterly to Regional Council in terms of how our ridership is doing, our revenue performance overall. And right now we're taking forward our next big business plan that'll be at Regional Council tomorrow, Regional Committee tomorrow for review and hopefully adoption. And what that really is setting the course for the next 5 to 10 years of how we want to diversify our ridership, make investments in transit, and really we want to keep attracting new riders. We talk a lot about transit freedom, making the system simple, easy to use, and efficient. And we really want customers to have that experience when they're using the service, and that includes, making sure we have a frequent network on our major corridors that people can easily access and just really achieve that transit freedom.
Neil, I appreciate your time on the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Neil Malcolm is the Director of Transit Services with the region of Waterloo. GRT seeing a decrease in the number of passengers as a result. That's in the first quarter of this year. As a result, some planned service expansions will be put on hold. And as of July the 1st, the cost of a cash fare goes up to $4 per ride. The cost of a monthly transit pass increases by 8% to $104. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I have seen it because it was shared with me multiple times, and we wanted to get an answer from our public school board about a presentation that was made to teachers. The school board has since let us know this presentation made almost 2 years ago, but under the slide headline of Dismantling Whiteness at Waterloo, Oxford, the word family was identified as harmful by racialized students. What does this mean, and how does our public school board view families? We'll talk about it coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, a story got picked up by a media outlet about a presentation that was made at Waterloo Oxford Public School here in the region. And one of the slides that was shared repeatedly, and we received it so many times here at the radio station, we knew we had to follow up. The slide under the headline, Dismantling Whiteness at Waterloo Oxford. Words matter. And the word in this case is family, which has been identified, according to the slide, as harmful by our racialized students. It implies or puts the value position of a male authority and hierarchy, and it implies a nuclear family structure, which is not the same for everyone. It also asks for obedience, no room for questions or criticism, and it creates an expectation to prioritize families' needs and wants while sacrificing personal boundaries. That's what the slide said in the presentation that was made. The Public School Board has clarified that the presentation goes back to November of 2023 and is endeavoring to provide additional context around that. Scott Miller is the director of the Waterloo Region District School Board and joins us to talk about it. Scott, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you today?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm glad to hear it. What was the purpose of that presentation made at Waterloo Oxford and presumably other schools in the region back in November of 23?
Sure, and I think what I'd like to start with, Mike, is just one is certainly families, parents, caregivers are partners in education, and in my career, which is spanning close to 30 years now, that has just always been the case. So I first, how this was received, want to apologize to community and if how they received it and certainly the context that they received it within. I think those are important things just to start with, and have always appreciated the feedback, the engagement and the support of our many families and parents and caregivers. That being said, the work at Waterloo Oxford was part of, and we've been doing work across our system, specifically on dismantling anti-Black racism, which has been a mandate of us from the Ministry of Education as well as the Ontario Human Rights Commission. And in doing that work, what we have been starting to do is look at structures and ask questions and try to imagine certainly how our students experience mainly school. And in doing so, thinking about what does a nuclear family look like. And in doing so, just using that and that slide in particular that you referenced, a lot of those comments and the context that they're in is conversation points, with a recognition that certainly I can talk to my experience, that I grew up in a family, two parents, a sibling, much like maybe yourself and many others in our community, certainly throughout their lives, realizing that our families now who are coming to our schools, they are experiencing family in many different ways. Some cases They may come from a single-parent home. In other cases, they may be living with aunts and uncles. In other places, they may have situations where they're living with a step-parent and so forth. So that understanding of what family maybe was at one point to where we are now is just being able to really support our teaching staff and others to see students that are in front of them and how they show up at school and the experiences they have outside of school within what family might be for them.
What makes the word family harmful?
Quite honestly, Mike, I think families are something that certainly we should all appreciate, bring a lot of joy to our life. I would say that that word is not one that would cause harm. Certainly, in some cases, again, that context, and of course, I wasn't there for the presentation. But the thinking around what family may represent to some people, I think it's important to take that in context because some people within their family environment would be in situations where maybe they are being harmed, or maybe there is an experience that certainly is something that even moves to things like abuse and others that some of our students may experience in that family context.
The board, Scott, has made it clear that this was a meeting that dates all the way back to November of 23, so almost 2 years ago now. Is the presentation still being made as part of a teacher's learning process?
What we've learned, Mike, certainly over time, and as we've engaged in this work, specifically looking at and dismantling racism in all its forms and ultimately in all of our schools, is a recognition that in some of our teachings previously, in language that's been used, it really made it difficult for people who are receiving that learning to engage. And in some cases, that sense of this feeling, and I'll say certainly from our white staff, that they would step back and worry and have some concern and potentially even fear or want to defend that that's not who I am and so forth. So what we really strive to do is, as we have looked at our professional learning, how we're engaging in any of our anti-racism work, is how are we providing opportunities that allow people to make a connection, that allow our staff to engage in conversation that will allow them to see a different perspective, to see a different way, while at the same time really being learners and really trying to take that emotion away in some cases, because people who enter those learning spaces with high emotion really aren't in a place to learn. And we recognize that some of the language that people will hear whenever we're talking about racism, and that it will be something that does allow for high emotion. And so how we've shifted our work in that we're trying to find different ways to allow people to come into that conversation, while at the same time recognizing the need and the urgency to make changes to some of our systems so all of our students can truly be successful and achieve at their highest level.
Just based on the questions that have been asked of us as a media outlet, Scott, and so we can be clear about this, the main question is around the use of the word family and whether or not that's still acceptable in our public school system. Can the word family still be used by teachers, students, others in the public school system?
Oh, absolutely, Mike. The family is vital and important to all the work that we do, and so absolutely that is a word that we actually want to celebrate and appreciate the many families we get to work with every day. And again, if that was the message that people have taken from this, that is, apologize for that. In fact, that every day we hope to celebrate families and engage with them, knowing that when we're working closely with families, parents, and caregivers, that our students are going to thrive and be able to achieve at a level at their highest level.
Does the board follow up with the teachers who received this presentation to understand how they felt about it and what they took away from it?
Yeah, certainly. That is a process actually we're going through right now. But I will say that these presentations such as that and our continued learning, specifically around work around dismantling anti-Black racism, or as I say, racism in general across our system. This is ongoing work. That wouldn't have been just one opportunity to engage in human rights and equity work. So ultimately, those teachers would have had greater opportunities to engage in dialogue and so forth. So that's not an isolated presentation. We know that this work has to be ongoing. And certainly one opportunity, and at a staff meeting in particular, is a short opportunity to begin this conversation. So those teachers would have had other opportunities to engage. And certainly, to your point, it's something that we will be following up on. And just seeing where people are at. And already there's been conversations started with Waterloo Oxford in particular.
Scott, appreciate you making time for the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure, Mike. Have a good rest of your day.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Scott Miller is the director of the Waterloo Region District School Board, trying to provide that context around the presentation that was made back in November of 23 that prompted a number of questions to us. And the board also issued a statement about it. You can find it on the board's website, wrdsb.ca. Waterloo Region District School Board values families as partners in students' education. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. My beloved and I were out for a walk this weekend, saw what was once a single-family home in our neighborhood reduced to rubble, ready to build the new duplex that's coming, which is totally fine. It just struck us how fast it happened. One day the sign's posted, the next day the house is demolished and it's ready to be rebuilt into something that can house even more people. So clearly this can be done, right? Why then is the province getting a middling grade on housing? We'll talk about it next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Our provincial and federal governments have received their grades on their progress relative to the 140 policy recommendations made by the Task Force for Housing and Climate last year. It's the report card on more and better housing, and its author, who also happens to be the founding director of the Missing Middle Initiative, joins the program to talk about it, Mike Moffat. Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
Ontario scores a C on the report card, which is just a shade better than Alberta, who scored the worst. But where is it in Ontario that we're falling short on housing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ontario was kind of middle of the pack overall, but we assessed each province on 5 different criteria. One of the biggest ones where we're falling behind is allowing for having a housing system that allows for a big kind of increase in supply. Ontario has the largest municipal development charges anywhere in North America. We have some of the slowest approvals times in North America. The provincial government is looking into these things as part of Bill 17. So overall, that is the area where I think we're falling behind the most. And interestingly, again, the provincial government seems to kind of agree with the report, because in the last month or so, they have put out this new bill that is looking to address some of these issues.
Is it regulation that's getting in the way of getting more housing built more quickly in the province of Ontario?
Yeah, both taxes and regulation. So our taxes are on new housing are some of the highest, again, in North America. Things, including development charges, but also things like land transfer taxes. If we look at British Columbia, they exempt new houses up to a certain dollar amount from land transfer taxes, the idea being that can help incentivize the construction of new homes. We don't do that in Ontario, and we could. British Columbia, again, is looking at legalizing kind of European-style apartments. These are smaller apartments with a single staircase through the center. We're not doing that in Ontario. So a lot of it does come down to this taxes and regulations side of things. The provincial government has done a number of things over the last 6 years, but we're still well behind our North American peers.
Is the solution then, Mike, as simple as eliminating those taxes and regulations and opening up the opportunity to build more homes or create more homes?
Yeah, absolutely. We just have to do so in kind of a responsible way. So, for example, one of the areas that Ontario does very well in is making sure that we don't build houses on floodplains because the most expensive home is the one you have to build twice. So Ontario actually got very good grades for that. So it is in this deregulation in kind of focusing our tax system, but not just cutting willy-nilly, but having smart regulation. So we look at the city of Edmonton, for instance. They were the first place in Canada to have AI review permit approvals. So something that might take 6 weeks here in Ontario, they can do in 6 hours. So it's being smart about the regulation side, and we tend to be very behind here in Ontario.
What role does the federal government play in all of this?
Well, the federal government has a very important role. They have the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation that finances apartment buildings, provides mortgage insurance. The tax system plays a big role. So we've seen the federal government eliminate the GST on purpose-built rentals. They're looking at having a full GST rebate for first-time home buyers. That will be a useful thing. We think the federal government could go further and make that rebate available to all new home buyers. So they do play a very important role both on the supply side and then on the demand side through policies such as immigration and international students.
The numbers, Mike, are staggering, quite frankly, when we talk about the number of homes that we need in Ontario and nationally in such a short period of time by 2031 or so. How confident are you that we can reach the 1.5 million homes in Ontario or the 3.5 million homes across the country?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not confident at all. I thought, 2 or 3 years ago, I thought, if we started right away, really put in some large-scale reforms, we would get there. But we're falling further and further behind. We need 150,000 homes a year in Ontario to get there. This year, we're looking to have about 75,000, about half of the housing starts we need. And housing starts have fallen. They fell in 2023, they fell in 2024, and they're projected to fall again this year. So we need to double housing starts at a time where in Ontario, our housing starts have been falling year after year. So I don't think we're going to get there. And I think that should be a wake-up call to the province, to our municipalities to say, hey, what we're doing is not working. Let's go back to the drawing board and really see how we can accelerate housing supply.
Mike, appreciate the work that you do and the time you've given us on the show this morning. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Mike Moffat is the founding director of the Missing Middle Initiative, and he's the author of the report card on more and better housing. It grades our provinces and our federal government on how progress towards building more homes is going. And while Alberta scored the lowest, nobody scored higher than a C+. That was Quebec, the highest score on the list. Ontario comes in at a C, which points to progress made in building homes in safer areas, i.e. not on floodplains like you heard Mike talk about. But we as a province score poorly in adding affordable housing, legalizing density with higher unit maximums, and in reining in those sky-high development charges. I didn't know until relatively recently that development charges were not common. They're not everywhere. And I feel sometimes like we're a little drunk on development charges here in the province of Ontario, which is money that municipalities can collect to create the necessary infrastructure that housing demands, right? Because you build you put a new development into a city, you need the infrastructure to get there, water, sewer, et cetera. You want the amenities, community centers, park space, things like that. But these development charges can really inhibit home building. And look, I get it. Growth should pay for growth, we like to say as well. I'm curious as to what you think the barriers are, or maybe the barriers that you have seen. Calling on my tradespeople that I know listen to the show, and maybe you've got some better insight because, as I said before the news update, my beloved and I were out for a walk on the weekend and saw a home in our neighborhood that we knew. It had been, the signage went up that this home is going to be turned into a multi-unit dwelling, which is fine. It's happening all over the place. But the speed at which that house came down, it's now reduced to rubble. Something else is coming up. The foundation's already poured. Clearly, this can happen in a hurry. So why isn't it? Why isn't it around every corner we turn, we find a new house going up? I haven't quite figured that out yet. But if you have, I'd love to know about it. What's holding us back? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
So we need to double housing starts at a time where in Ontario, our housing starts have been falling year after year. So I don't think we're going to get there. And I think that should be a wake-up call to the province, to our municipalities to say, hey, what we're doing is not working. Let's go back to the drawing board and really see how we can accelerate housing supply.
Mike Moffat is the founding director of the Missing Middle Initiative and the author of the report card on more and better housing, which finds Ontario getting a C grade. Development charges, high taxes, and regulation being two of the biggest barriers to getting housing built. What are you seeing where you are? Let's go to the phones and find out. Dallas, good morning.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good. I just want to say that, yes, all these wonderful housing start announcements and everything, it is a great thing. There's no doubt about it. Clearly, we need it. My big question is who's going to build them? We don't have that amount of construction workers in the province at the moment. And there's barriers, yes, I understand all the municipal barriers and all the taxes and all this kind of good stuff. But if you want to build 100,000 houses a year, you best start hiring some carpenters from somewhere because we haven't got enough.
Yeah, you know what, Dallas, and 150,000 a year, not to be put too fine a point on it, but I hear you, and I've heard that argument before. And in fairness, yes, the now empty lot that my beloved and I walked past is a home, will be a duplex. It's not like it's a skyscraper, so not as much manpower is required there. But we were blown away at the speed. Like, clearly there are some people ready to do the work if, I guess, the conditions warrant it and make it worthwhile, right? Mike, good morning.
Hi.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, this is Mike. I'm just calling. I just turned on the TV show, and I just wanted to make an opinion and tell you what I think about housing and apartments.
Yeah, by all means.
Oh, good. I'm live. Well, you know, you build this, you build that, you build thousands of homes. But I see is what you got to build apartments that are $1,000 a month, so people can afford them. Like people are paying $2,200 a month for a two-bedroom or more, or $1,500 or $1,600 for a one-bedroom. Like, I look across my apartments right now on my balcony, and I see families with a daughter, a son, a mother, and a father living in a one-bedroom. It's ridiculous. You can build all you want, but they should be building them for like $1,000, or less. Put just a normal fridge and a stove and a kitchen. You don't need dishwashers in there and microwaves and all this stuff to put your rent up. It's kind of crazy and sad. And rent evictions, people getting kicked out for rent evictions. If they want to renovate the building, let them renovate it. It's not my problem. So it's just too bad, too sad, and I don't worry about it too much. But who cares about homes? Who can afford them?
Yeah.
Should be for the lower class people, like middle class, lower class.
I get it, Mike. I hear where you're coming from, and you're getting to the affordable housing side of things and the lack thereof. Many will say that if we increase the supply, thereby reducing the demand, those rents are going to go down and things will become more affordable. I don't think it's the only solution, but I think the more supply we can get online, the better. Daryl, good morning.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm all right, and you?
I'm good.
Good.
Hey, just a couple comments here. One about the building permits and the accessibility for, getting things moving. We're building a new barn here on the farm. We're in Blandford Blenheim Township in Oxford County, and believe it or not, we submitted the application and we had our building permit within 28 minutes. So
Wow.
It is achievable.
Okay, yeah.
It is achievable. And that's the biggest thing. We talk to other farms and ag. I'm sure it's the same in other industries, but it's all the delays of paperwork and that. When we want to get going, right? And we're really pleasantly surprised with our official here in Blandford Blenheim. And the other comment I have with all these houses and that is from my industry is who's feeding all these people? That's the big thing, is where's the food coming from for all these people? So just wanted to comment on that.
All right, Daryl, appreciate that. And I would suspect that building a barn for agricultural purposes, well, we know, I don't just suspect it, it's different than building residential. But that still is a good news story within 28 minutes, because I remember friends out at 3Gen Organics in Mapleton Township and what they went through with the barriers to getting their farm store built. So, and again, store a little different than a barn, but either way, I do think we get in our way with over-regulation, and the report card on more and better housing seems to back that up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Ontario does not fare as poorly as Alberta, but still only a C, a middling grade on housing, primarily because of taxes / development charges and regulation. And that is not moving us forward at the pace we need to be moving forward in order to achieve the 1.5 million homes that need to be built in this province, 3.5 million across the country by 2031. What's holding us back? Let's go back to the phones. Jim is with us. Good morning, Jim.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for making it.
Yeah, and, what's holding us back is, probably everybody's saying the same thing, the basic affordability of starter homes for the young people. I'm a parent. I've got a young person that's looking to buy their first house, and him and his partner make good money, in my mind, but it's still not good enough to buy, whatever the average home is in our area. So if we go and we cut taxes on the new homes somewhat and cut fees for development, this all sounds good, but it has to be passed on in the price of the house, which I question that it ever would be in reality.
You think the builder will pocket the difference?
Well, what's stopping it? Now, today in the real estate market, it seems the houses are sitting around a little longer than they have been. And you have two forces that want to keep the price up. The builder, obviously, for profitability, and that's business. The real estate people as well do not seem to, and the owners are willing to take a little longer time to try and sell a house. So they have come down some in general, but there's still, it's still that basic unaffordability and possibly the type of house that's being built for first-time homeowners.
Jim, I appreciate the call, and I think I know where you're coming from with that type of house, right? A starter home today is not the starter home of even my day. And heck, I only got into the housing market in 2014, but it was different back then when it came to starter homes versus what you're seeing for first-time buyers today. And this whole issue of affordability will continue to rear its head when we talk housing. I'm pretty sure, I'm going off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure the numbers that Mike Moffat had shared, if house prices remained where they are today, it would take 18 years of steady wage increases to make housing in this market, quote unquote, affordable. 18 years of wage increases, 0 increases in housing cost. That's a long way from affordability. An update from the 570 News Center coming right up. And then the Kitchener Rangers sign a big name. Oh, the year ahead's pretty exciting. General Manager Mike McKenzie joins us next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
This is where today's topics turn into today's talking points. It's local and it's Democratic radio at its finest. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
Obviously, Kitchener's a first-class organization, and I want to play for them. I think just the exposure and playing against top-of-the-top players and winning games with Kitchener. Obviously, great fans here, and it's electric during a game here. I can't wait to play in front of the ecstatic fans and win some games with Kitchener. Hopefully bring a M Cup to the city.
The Mike Farwell Show continues
on 570 News Radio.
Hopefully bring a Memorial Cup to the city, says Adam Valentini, as he was announced last week, Thursday to be exact, by the Kitchener Rangers joining the hockey club for the upcoming season. Mike McKenzie is the general manager of the Kitchener Rangers and joins us to chat about it. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
All good, thanks.
Glad to hear it. You acquired Adam in a trade with Brampton last September, before the season even started. He was committed to an NCAA program, so he goes to the USHL. Some have called this kind of the long game for you. What happens between then and now in terms of maybe fostering a relationship with Adam that ultimately leads to his signing last week?
Yeah, well, there's different various touch points throughout that process. Our method has always been to keep in contact and make sure that Adam, or any prospect, but let's use Adam as the example here, Adam and his family know that we're very interested and we value him as a player. We want to put our best foot forward while not also going over the top to annoy or bug or bother people. So it's finding that happy medium. It ends up being a mix of in-person contact. I went to the USHL showcase in Pittsburgh last September. That would have been our first touch point with them. Second would have been in Sarnia at the U17s. And then third one would have been going to a game in Plymouth, Michigan, where they're playing, Chicago Steel were playing the U.S. national program. So there's 3 or 4, in-person, going to watch him play, saying hi to Adam and his family. And then there's the other part of it is just, staying in contact through other means, texting and things like that. So, that's the biggest thing for us, is just making sure they know we're here and we're available, what we have to offer, but also not being bothersome or annoying to the point where people are getting frustrated if you're reaching out or seeing them every weekend. No one wants that. So that's kind of the process of how it works with, a highly touted prospect like that we're trying to recruit.
Obviously, the NCAA rule change that allows a player like Adam with a commitment to the University of Michigan to play in the CHL, and he could still go to the NCAA after playing in the CHL for any length of time now with that rule change. But it's still a pretty big coup to get a player of Adam's caliber to Kitchener. What does that tell you about where the Rangers are at as an organization, Mike?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination. I think we're seeing now with the rule change that some of these younger players that do have commitments that we're leaning towards going to school are now not shy to sign on with CHL teams, whether that be for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, who knows. Every case is different. So I think partly it's due to that change as a whole. But like you mentioned, we are proud of what we have here and what we have to offer. And so I think, not to pat ourselves on the back, but give ourselves a little bit of credit that, it is an intriguing place to play with our fan base and the community we have here and our facilities, which are, in the midst of getting upgraded right now. So there's lots of positives there when it comes to playing here. So it's a little bit of a combination of both, I would say. Rule change plus some intriguing possibilities to play in Kitchener with what we have here.
We can certainly read about this young man. He's going to be coming into his NHL draft year, and some are already saying that he could go in the first 2 rounds of next June's NHL draft. But you talked earlier, Mike, about those touch points through the season. You've seen him up close and personal. What does Adam Valentini bring to your hockey club?
Yeah, he should be able to make an impact right away, but I think you want to be a little careful. I mean, our league is still an 18 to 20-year-old dominant league for the most part, not saying that 16 and 17-year-olds can't have success and play big factors. We saw, a guy like Cam Reed do that this year, and Romano and guys like that. So he'll definitely have the ability to make an impact right away. He's a smart, offensively gifted player. He sees the ice very well. He can make plays, but he can also score. He's got a really good release and good shot, and he's very good on the power play. Anytime the puck's on his stick, things can happen. So he's going to be a guy that puts up points. He's always been a point producer at every league and level he's played at, with the brain and stick that he has. So I think that's what you'll see. But he plays a bit of a tenacious, hard-working game, too. It's not just a soft skill. He's in the corners. He gets to the dirty areas of the ice. He works hard. He keeps his feet moving. He engages in battles. So he'll be a real welcome addition to our lineup with the skill, but also the work ethic as well.
The kind of running joke last season, Mike, was the Kitchener Rangers weren't too bad for a rebuilding team, because coming into the season, many pegged it as a rebuild year, and maybe the Rangers would be sort of in that bottom tier if they even made the playoffs. We all know what happened instead. Now you add a player like Valentini. He mentions the Memorial Cup. We know there are hopes to maybe host, but certainly be competitive enough in 2027. So all of this is to say, how does it feel at this point coming into a season where the expectations will be greater?
Yeah, I mean, the rebuilding thing is in hindsight kind of funny when you look back on it, because I think that's more of like a fan and media-driven narrative than it was actually like in our locker room and with our staff and players. But I mean, it is definitely different when no one's expecting you to do anything and you can play the underdog role and sneak up a little bit on people. It's always a little bit easier. And I think that's going to shift this year, and something our coaches are aware of, and I'm sure our players will be made aware of when they arrive here for training camp, is that I don't think we're going to sneak up on anyone this year or in the next couple of years. And there's a different mindset that's needed when you're going into a season and people are expecting things from you and they're expecting you to be good. There's a little bit more pressure, a little whatever you want to call it. And I think our guys are ready for that. I think our players are ready for it. I think our coaches are ready for it. So I'm not worried about it, but there's definitely going to be a different feel and a different expectation heading into the next couple of years, I think, which is good. But it's definitely going to be a little bit of a different feel and need a different mindset from everyone involved, I think.
It's going to be a lot of fun, no question. And Adam Valentini will be a big part of that for sure. Mike, thanks for making some off-season time for us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Mike McKenzie, general manager of the Kitchener Rangers. When Adam Valentini was introduced last Thursday afternoon, we were out at the R&T Park in Waterloo together, enjoying a Farwell for Hire event. So I couldn't be there in person, which crushed my heart just a little bit. But able to catch up with Mike McKenzie over the weekend to arrange this conversation this morning. Make no mistake, Adam Valentini is the real deal. And I like where Mike McKenzie, the general manager, is coming from. It'll be a different mindset when people are expecting you to win more often than not when they go to the rink. We saw that over this past season for sure. But coming into the season, well, it wasn't going to be that way. Coming into this next season now, when we get underway in September, we are expecting things, and that comes with additional pressure. But as the Rangers coaching staff will tell you, pressure is a privilege. The schedule for next season, by the way, comes out a week from today. Next Monday, we'll know when the Rangers open the season, when they'll take our favorite road trips, etc. And again, Adam Valentini will be with them. Committed to the University of Michigan, but thinks it's going to be great to be here in Kitchener, hoping to win a Memorial Cup with the Rangers. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Far be it from me to rain on someone else's business parade and business idea, but I confess to having a bit of a difficult time with this one. Real Life Robotics, which is a robotics and automation company at Velocity, which you have probably heard the name of before. That's the University of Waterloo's startup incubator. It has created what it describes as a first-of-its-kind robot-powered delivery partnership with that delivery company that John Hamm shills for on TV. Skip, right? It used to be Skip the Dishes. Now they just call it Skip. But what happens now here, and this is happening not too far away in Markham, just north of Toronto, robots are making the deliveries that you request through Skip. Now, I mean, I understand that over the course of time, automation has always been seen as something that's going to take away the role of the human. Automation will replace human beings with the jobs that are too mundane or tedious, and it's happened in many other ways before. But this one is starting to, I don't know, it just strikes me as being maybe a bridge too far, because these little robots, they kind of look like a cooler on wheels, you know, the kind you're going to fill up when you're going away for a weekend camping or something like that. And these things navigate their own way through the streets of, again, Markham, to get the deliveries to the person who made the call to Skip to ask for the delivery. Some of them, and they navigate very well. Like early results are quite astounding in terms of the robot's ability to navigate a busy street. Sidewalk really is where they operate, but they make sure they don't get in anybody's way. Sometimes they even have a little face on a screen on the front of them, so that you're able to, you know, it almost humanizes the robot just a little bit more, and you feel as though you're interacting with something living as opposed to something robotic and just on wheels. Anyway, I find it a little bit off-putting. I understand that, you know, you may want to offload the task of navigating traffic and, quite frankly, paying a human who can only work so many hours and gets tired after a while, and replace it with the robot. But seeing these little things move around a city, smiling with their little digital faces at people, for me, feels like we've entered a brand new world. We have certainly crossed a given threshold, and I'm just not sure that I'm personally ready to give that much control to the machines. At least not in my life. Maybe you feel differently, but this might be it. If I'm going to go through a delivery app, at least let me have a human on the other end. More human interaction, please. Less robots. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Sharon Boyd is a member of the Cambridge Arts Guild, and they've got a big event coming up this week. It opens on Thursday. Sharon, what is the Cambridge Art Attic?
This is an event that we've held for the last 14 years with a small break during COVID. And over those 14 years, it has raised $180,000 for the Cambridge Arts Guild, and all of that money goes back into supporting events mainly in Cambridge, artistic events like Cookies and Kids Theatre, the Cambridge Studio Tour, Artist in Residence. We support the Unsilent Night event at Christmas. We support the Cambridge Sculpture Gardens. We just installed a new outdoor gallery at the Cambridge Centre for the Arts. So every bit of that money goes back into the community. It's all raised by volunteers and no expenses other than for promotion, etc.
So the Art Attic event runs Thursday through Saturday at the Cambridge Centre for the Arts. Sharon, what will we find there this year?
Well, you will be absolutely amazed at what you'll find. We collect art all year, store it at the Art Centre, and then this week we spend 3 days hanging it over 3 floors of the Art Centre. And it's all types of art. It's ranging from posters, framed art, unframed art. We have, this year, some of the special things we have is we have 2 silk screens printed on wood by A.J. Casson. And they were written up in the Waterloo Record, actually, in 2021, appraised by John Sewell. And he appraised it at that time, each one at $450. We also have a Salvador Dali signed and numbered print with attached documents authenticating it by the auction at which it was purchased in the 1970s. We have a contemporary bronze sculpture by the Canadian artist Andrew Posa. We have lots of local artists. We have so much, it's hard to describe. And we put it up all over the Art Centre. Most of it is cash and carry, which means you can purchase it and walk away with it right at that time. We have one room where we set up a silent auction, and that you can bid on from Thursday and until Saturday at 1 o'clock, and that's when the silent auction closes.
And what are the hours for the Art Attic this year?
Thursday, it's from 9 o'clock to, I think it's 8 o'clock when the Art Centre closes. Friday, it's from 9 o'clock till 10, because that day, also just outside the Art Centre, is the Cambridge Celebration of the Arts. So we have art inside and outside that day. And Saturday, it closes at 1 o'clock. That's when the bidding is over, and shortly after that, we start taking things down.
Sharon, we'll wish you the best of luck with what we know will be another great event. Thank you very much for sharing more about it with us today.
Thank you, Mike, for calling.
Sharon Boyd, a member of the Cambridge Arts Guild. The annual Art Attic starts on Thursday, runs through Saturday at the Cambridge Centre for the Arts, which is right beside Cambridge City Hall on Dixon. The Art Attic event helping raise money, $180,000 raised over 14 years of operation. I'm going to get you an update from the 570 News Center. And then this week in music history, did Led Zeppelin plagiarize somebody? We'll talk about that and more coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. My music hits me so hard, makes me say, oh my Lord, thank you for blessing me. What am I to run and too hype me? It feels good when you know you're down. A super dope homeboy from the Oak Town, and I'm known as such. And this is a beat you can't touch. I told you, homeboy.
Okay, so let me get this straight. I just want to make sure I can't touch this. Is that the message I'm getting from somebody who needs no introduction as we introduce This Week in Music History on the show? And our good friend and musicologist Brian Allison also needs no introduction. We talk to Brian every Monday morning at 11 for a look back at This Week in Music History. Don't forget to check out Brian's Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History, and follow along for more. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning. I'm still grooving to MC Hammer. I want to go and get my balloon pants on.
You can have your balloon pants. I mean, I get behind that a little bit. Not that I ever had them, but I'm not grooving. I'm cringing a little bit. Like, really, this is what we put up with, eh? This is what we said, okay, we'll make it a number one smash hit.
A number one smash hit for a long, long time, too. People probably don't remember 1990, but that album, Please Hammer, Don't Hurt, started a record-breaking 21-week stay at the top of the U.S. charts, making it the longest uninterrupted stay at the top of the charts since the charts were enacted. So that was pretty big. I'm with you. That song I remember hearing it for the first time and thinking, okay, kind of catchy. Fast forward a month, and it's like, please don't play that song anymore.
Exactly. And here we are, 35 years later, playing it again. Why not?
Yep. It'll be in my head the rest of the afternoon.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go further back in history to 1974 this week, and a completely different genre, but an absolute iconic artist in Dolly Parton.
Little bit of a different artist, for sure. Dolly, I mean, she's just legendary, and it was June 8th, 1974, that she was number one in the U.S. country charts with I Will Always Love You, which was, of course, a song that would come back to circulation a few years later. Interestingly, Elvis wanted to cover I Will Always Love You, and Dolly said, okay, I think I could go along with that if you want to cover one of my songs, until the infamous Colonel Tom Parker, who was, of course, Elvis's manager, stepped in and said that it was standard procedure for a songwriter to sign over half of the publishing rights to any song that Elvis recorded, which is, of course, not standard operating procedure. Maybe for Colonel Tom it was. Dolly Parton declined and said, well, then you're not going to be covering my song. But, of course, it was licensed later on to Whitney Houston, who in 1982 took it to number one worldwide, along with her film The Bodyguard. And that cover version earned Dolly Parton a cool $10 million. So it brought the song back into the spotlight, and also banked Dolly a decent amount of money as well.
So I suspect that had it gone the other way, Colonel Tom would have got $5 million of that $10 million, or at least part of that from Elvis's side of it?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, Colonel Tom was absolutely unscrupulous. I mean, he took most of Elvis's earnings his entire career. I would call him a crook. I think he was a legitimate criminal, because he was taking so much more than he should have for a manager's role. And, again, this is Elvis. Like, how difficult is it to promote Elvis Presley? That's not really a hard one. I mean, most people could do that. So, for him to come forward and say, okay, we'll record this song, but, you have to sign over half of your publishing rights for the rest of the song's life to Elvis, not going to happen. And Dolly, she's very business savvy, so she would have known, forget it.
Yeah, you can't pull the wool over her eyes, for sure.
No.
All right, we started today by talking about MC Hammer's Please Hammer, Don't Hurt 'Em album, which was his third, and it spent all those weeks at number one back in 1990 on the charts. But going back to 1967, an album that I can more easily get behind, Brian, one of the all-time best in my personal opinion, Sgt. Pepper's from the Beatles.
Sgt. Pepper hit number one on June 10th, 1967, and it would spend many, many weeks, 27 weeks in the number one position. This was just, it was really the first concept album. It was the first album that, depending on who you talk to in this day and age, kind of had a loose storyline from start to beginning, and that's, much to be interpreted by the listener. But just was an iconic record. It brought home the point that a band wasn't just about musicians. It was about songwriting, and it was also about how you used a recording studio, that the recording studio itself was an instrument, and there were so many possibilities that could be explored. It wasn't just about going in, plugging in your guitars and your drums, and banging out a couple of songs. There was all kinds of things that could be done creatively in the studio, and that was Sgt. Pepper, just, all of these different sounds that nobody had ever heard before. Cost £25,000, or about $42,000 in 1967 to produce the album, which, seems incredible today, and over 700 hours of studio time. So the Beatles spent a lot of time crafting the songs on Sgt. Pepper, and it shows. They're just, I like to think of each song as almost a work of art, and when you put them all together, it just sounds fantastic. There's really not a dull moment on that record from start to finish, and for me, A Day in the Life is still the ultimate Beatles song. I could listen to that song on repeat endlessly.
Yeah, it's a great point and a great example from a great album. One of my favorite stories of all time from music history is relatively recent, but I love it how Dave Grohl back in 2015 on This Week in Music History, Brian, channeled his inner hockey player. Tape it up and get back out there.
Right? He must have had a great trainer. Yeah, so June 12th, 2015, Dave is performing, obviously, with the Foo Fighters at a show in Sweden, and he fell off the stage, and Snappo broke his leg. And it was a pretty bad break, apparently, too. The folks that got to him first, the security were like, oh, we're going to have to cancel the show and get this guy to the hospital. So he got some medical attention backstage. They put a very temporary cast on him, propped him up, and he finished the show. A couple of stiff drinks, too, if rumors are to be believed, to steady the nerves and numb the pain from such a fracture. But it was pretty cool. He came right back out within, I think, about 30 to 40 minutes, finished the Foo Fighters show, and went on to finish the rest of that European tour. Well, the European tour was canceled because he had to have surgery to fix the break, but it resumed on July 4th, just 3 weeks later in Washington, D.C. And they built Dave a custom throne that he could sit on in the front of the stage. He could still play guitar. He could still sing, obviously. And, what a trooper. Amazing story.
I love it. I absolutely love it. It was probably, I don't know, Zeppelin, I won't call it their most iconic, but certainly up there with among the very best. And you drew my attention to, and I've listened to the audio thanks to you, Brian. I got some thoughts on whether or not Zeppelin plagiarized this particular song. We'll get to it after the break, so hang on with us as Brian Allison, our musicologist, discusses This Week in Music History with us. He does this every Monday morning at 11. Make sure you check out the Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History. Did Led Zeppelin plagiarize the opening guitar riff of this iconic song? We'll play it for you. You can be the judge. We'll talk about it coming up on This Week in Music History here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Getting the answers to all the hard questions.
The Mike Farwell Show continues
on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Every Monday morning at 11, we're joined by our good friend and musicologist, Brian Allison, for a look back at This Week in Music History. And this week's look back includes a little bit of a listen back. Very carefully, listen to this song by a band called Taurus. The song is called Spirit, and decide for yourself if it sounds familiar in any way. Brian, as I like to say, come on with your coming on. This in 1968, and a judge ruled that Led Zeppelin did not plagiarize?
He did not, and it was held up in 2019. Yeah, the band is actually called Spirit. The song is called Taurus. And here's the compelling part for me. The opening band for Spirit on their 1968-69 tour, 3 guesses who that might have been.
Spirit?
Led Zeppelin.
Oh, yes.
Opened for them on their tour. So they were an opening band for this band. Then they put out Stairway to Heaven in 1971. Sounds suspiciously alike. Plus, you have to look at Led Zeppelin's record. This was not the only time that the mighty Led Zeppelin were accused of thievery with respect to music. Whole Lotta Love, which was a major hit for Zeppelin in 1969, had the band accused of pinching this from the Small Faces cover of Willie Dixon's song, You Need Love. And they eventually had to pay the Willie Dixon estate from a lawsuit in 1985 saying that they'd stolen that song. They were sued for stealing Dazed and Confused from Jake Holmes, which was Jimmy Page's former band. The Lemon Song was accused of borrowing heavily from Howlin' Wolf's Killing Floor. So this was not something that was new to Led Zeppelin. They were known to sort of pinch riffs and things from other artists and not give them credit for it. So, but the court didn't see it that way. They listened to the two songs. They listened to Stairway. They listened to Taurus and went, no, we don't really see the similarity. I don't know what they were listening to.
Okay, thank you for that. So I had all my Spirits and Tauruses backwards there, but the Spirit is the band, Taurus is the song. Yeah. Like there's no... I'm no musicologist, Brian, but come on. That song, it's a direct rip of the riff, isn't it?
It totally is.
Yeah.
Like, the first time I heard it, I was like, how did they not hear that this is essentially the same guitar riff? I mean, it goes in a different direction. Stairway takes off in a much different direction. But those first iconic notes that we all know as Stairway to Heaven, that's plagiarism. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, I think the courts may have gotten that one wrong. Okay. On This Week in 1975, to this day remains, and you know how big a Rush fan I am, and they've got a few live albums in their repertoire, but this particular live album, for me, it probably is the best I've ever listened to, but maybe that's just me. This Week in 1975.
Frampton Comes Alive.
Love it.
Yeah, huge. Took Peter Frampton from almost no status to superstar status overnight. Peter had been around for a number of years, and of course he was with Humble Pie, but as a solo artist, he recorded some tracks at the Winterland Ballroom in June 1975, and Frampton Comes Alive hit the album charts in 1976 and went on to sell over 6 million copies in the U.S., making it one of the best live albums ever recorded. Is it the best live album recorded? I don't know. That's a conversation that could go on for hours, I'm sure. You mentioned Rush. I mean, Exit Stage Left for me is an incredible live record. You've got the Stones with Get Your Ya-Ya's Out from 70. You've got Cheap Trick live at Budokan, 78. Kiss Alive, 75. What a great record. Springsteen put out a box set of a whole decade of live stuff in 1986. I mean, there's quite a few of them out there that would make it, but I think Frampton Comes Alive is just on a different level.
It sounds and always has sounded that way to me, but you list a bunch of other great examples. The beauty of it all is the music that we've been able to enjoy over all these decades.
And I put, for Old Lang Syne, I put Frampton Comes Alive on the turntable this weekend and spun it, and it still sounds fantastic. I mean, it really is an excellent live album, excellent songwriting. I don't have any other Peter Frampton records in my collection.
Nor do I.
That's the only one I've listened to, but that seems to get the job done. Very, very talented.
Absolutely. Okay, and one more little tidbit, because it was a surprise marriage, and then the first interview from the couple with Diane Sawyer on This Week in 1995.
Oh, cringe.
I know.
Watching this, it's almost like I can go back in time and remember sitting there thinking, "Ooh, this is just uncomfortable." So June 14th, 1995, Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley appeared on ABC TV's Primetime Live with Diane Sawyer, and she asked them some very pointed questions about their surprise marriage and relationship. She asked them specifically if they had sex as a couple. They replied yes, that they do. They confirmed that that prenuptial agreement had been signed, and that was fortuitous because Lisa Marie would file for divorce from Michael Jackson less than 6 months later. But the question remains, was this marriage, the king of pop to the king of rock and roll's daughter, was it a publicity stunt or was it for real?
It was a publicity stunt.
I believe it was, too.
Yeah.
I believe it was something that they designed to sort of clear some of the allegations about Michael and also to further Lisa Marie's career, which kind of took off after that. She got a recording contract, made an album, and had some success as a recording artist before her untimely death, of course, and Michael Jackson's untimely death as well. But, yeah, I feel it was more something cooked up by their PR department.
See, they can't put anything past us, Brian. We've got Led Zeppelin dead to rights on stealing the riff from Spirit, and we got Lisa Marie and Michael Jackson on Staged Marriage. There you go.
We have all the answers.
Great talking to you, as always. Looking forward to next Monday.
You bet, Mike. Have a good day.
Cheers. Brian Allison, our musicologist who joins us every Monday morning at 11. For This Week in Music History, do not forget to check out the Facebook page of the same name. This Week in Music History, follow along for these tidbits and so many more as we take a trip down a musical memory lane every Monday morning at this time on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I have shared with you before the frustrations of a person living near a school in this community. Okay, let's be honest. I have complained and complained loudly about the mayhem, and that is not an exaggeration. It is utter mayhem on the roads in and around a school before and after school when kids are either being dropped off at school or picked up from school. Nobody cares where they park. They just stop in random places. They'll block driveways. They'll block fire hydrants. They'll get in one another's way. It is utter chaos every day, twice a day. And I have said in all my complaining that if only our municipalities had enough bylaw officers, or heck, hired a whole new battalion of bylaw officers, they would make all that money back and then some by issuing the parking tickets for all of the infractions that exist every day, twice a day. I promise. But now we have to also be concerned about the violence that can ensue, because in Guelph last Thursday, paramedics had to be called after one man headbutted another man over a parking dispute outside their child's school. That's right. They get to the school. One of them is parked in a manner that the other does not like. Shocking. Have I told you this happens in every school zone before and after school every day? So instead of, I don't know, using their lawnmowers strategically to blow grass and other debris towards an open window of a vehicle in front of somebody's house, I don't know who would do such a thing. This particular individual approached the other, confronted him about his poor parking, and in exchange, got headbutted. He was treated on the scene for a bloody nose. Nothing further came of that, except the man who did the headbutting has been arrested and charged with assault. Please just park more courteously, okay? It's Monday morning, 11:30. That means an update from the 570 News Center, and then David Drewe is here with Drewe's views and his view on the PM. Oh, he likes him. He really, really likes him. Why? We'll find out. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Now, that cat couldn't spell to win a bet, but he carried this battered notebook full of his poetry. More soul per square word than the Lord's Prayer. He was the kind of guy that called a spade a shovel, and a violin a fiddle, and a lady ma'am. And I don't even know why I think of him now. Maybe because he never told me a lie he'd have to apologize for later. Because he'd speak to a guy straight, eyeball to bloodshot eyeball, like he'd never even had a secret.
The eyes might be even more bloodshot than usual today because our good friend David Drewe says he is under-caffeinated.
They're also a little bit more bloodshot today because of the wildfire and the air quality. I'm asthmatic and allergic, so I probably look a bit rougher than I am.
You feel every bit of it. David Drewe is the owner of Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. He joins us every Monday morning at this time for Drewe's views. I'll remind you, he's also got extensive political experience, having been a staffer with a former Conservative MP here in the region. Let's get into federal politics. You still, I think this is 3 weeks in a row now, you have the hat trick of Mark Carney appreciation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still, like, seriously, I'll say it again. The only problem he's got is his expectations that he is raising, that these things are going to be happening and happening soon. And even if we interpret that very, very loosely, Ottawa does not move quickly. And so it's not just the content that he needs to worry about upsetting his base. You know, it's not just about the idea of pipelines that might be moving dirty oil. It's also just the idea of, if we're going to move quickly, how do we achieve social license? That was so big to the last Liberal government. And I think what we found was, although it was very well intentioned to get rid of the protests that had cursed the Harper government's attempts at projects, all that social license really amounted to was an ability to veto, an ability to slow things down to the point that nothing happened. So it's not just going to be the content of these things, it's going to be whose interests are not sufficiently dealt with by the content of these protests. And we're not just talking about First Nations necessarily. I mean, that's the obvious one, but it's the same idea as when we talk about high-speed rail going from Windsor to Montreal. We always talk about the farmers along the way. We always talk about the towns that will not get stops and that will lose or suffer the worst service to their current train service because it will be supplanted by this better option. There are going to be losers for all of these projects. And the nice thing about government going slowly is you tend to find a way to make things work. When you run roughshod, this will be interpreted by opponents, and I'm not saying it. I'm like, yeah, let's run roughshod, baby. Let's go. But when that starts to happen, well, are the people who insisted on social license and no dirty oil in the last caucus going to be cheering this on, or are they going to be Nellies?
But you're looking now just at, when you talk about this caucus, you're looking at the liberal circle, so to speak.
Yes.
When you talk about running roughshod, I don't necessarily disagree with the language, and I've been thinking about this too. Could we make it a comparison, although we're talking about different things with national infrastructure and projects in the national interest, but I think this is kind of similar to the way Donald Trump is running things in the U.S. It's Trump's way or the highway.
Well, no, I don't mean that. I'm not talking about acting illegally or.
But it seems like you may not like this, but Mark Carney and the Liberal government say you're going to get it, and
that's the way it worked until about 20 years ago,
right?
And. Unfortunately, I don't know that we can get around charter requirements with legislation, because that's how we ended up in this dirty mess. Is we have a Supreme Court that says you have to do certain things without giving us quite the definition of what it is for very good reasons. But now we're stuck with this point of, well, we don't need consent, but we need consultation. And what is the definition of adequate consultation? There's no veto, but we can fight for 30 years over the consultation being adequate or not.
But this is why we don't get things done, David.
No, exactly. So if we can define consultation in a charter-proof way that allows us to move quickly, that is what Mark Carney is starting to try to do with this bill that they just introduced. But boy, oh boy, I'm all in favor of it.
I am too.
But I can't believe the people who were telling me I was un-Canadian for wanting this for the last 9 years are going to be cheering this once they see what it takes to make the eggs or make the omelets, and the eggshells have to get broken.
They sure do, and they sure will. So just one more thing on that quickly, because I love
this is fun.
I love your reference to that dirty oil. But here's the thing. Is it just me, or is Mark Carney, a prime minister that you still to this point appreciate, not actually the anti-Trudeau? He ends the consumer carbon tax. He is now fixing immigration. He's going to build a pipeline. These are all things that Justin Trudeau would not have touched with a 10-foot pole.
No, that was policy. Now let me take you a couple steps further. He answers questions. He speaks with substance. When I look at him, I see a guy who's being prime minister. I don't see a guy who's playing prime minister. Mark Carney seems to me like he is answering the questions and he just has the facts. Whereas Justin Trudeau and all of his cabinet ministers felt like people who were reciting lines. You know what I mean? Mark Carney seems like a guy who's absorbed the brief and will answer your question because he doesn't have this formal, rigid structure to follow to get to the talking point he wants to get to. Now, he is also going to be quite impatient if you don't like his answers, and that's fun, but it's not just in these crazy policy ways that he is the anti-Trudeau. He is the He's serious.
He is.
You know what I mean? Right there. He's the anti-Trudeau. He's never going to wear running shoes to meet royalty.
Excellent point. And I wonder if, what I'm interested in here is whether or not Mark Carney breaks that mold that you said has now held up Ottawa for the last 20 years and counting, or Ottawa breaks him.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, that's just it. We'll come back to it later when we're talking about the summit, but There's a whole lot of reasons why Ottawa moves slowly beyond it's just stupid. And the machinery of government, I've always said this, the ship of state is not a speedboat. It does not turn on a dime. There are so many, you can't do anything without impact assessments. And I'm talking okay, we're going to raise EI for $100 a week. Well, we need impact studies on what that does to, what's the moral hazard? Are all of a sudden people going to be more willing to go on EI because we've increased the benefits? It's just, I'm picking stupid questions, but all of these questions have to be addressed for every stupid little change to everything. And there's a reason we have to ask these questions. Otherwise, you end up with mercury in rivers.
Okay, let me ask you this question, David Drewe. Did you not like Doug Ford's comparisons that he made between the Prime Minister and Santa Claus last week?
I really hope no children were listening, because it was just kind of like, wait, what does Santa do? He shows up with his big sleigh full of gifts, and now he's going to go away and figure stuff out. No. He asks us for our lists, and if we behave, we get it. Now, to continue that parallel, though, it really was amazing how all those little kid premiers were on their best behavior for Santa. It was all smiles and goods, and they're just really hoping that their projects are going to end up on the list. Santa's coming.
As long as they behave.
Yeah, but you know what? There's going to be that first list of projects, and some projects aren't going to be on them. Now, I'm pretty sure that, Doug Ford is not going to be raising a giant ruckus if the tunnel under the 401 doesn't become a national priority. But if the Ring of Fire doesn't, oh boy. Alberta's asks seem to be a bit more complicated, but geez, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Well, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but just to go back to what we were just talking about with Mark Carney and what defines adequate consultation. Ring of Fire, Ontario, Bill 5. Premier Ford has said, no, we have consulted with our Indigenous communities. They're in favor, or at least some are in favor of this. Might we get some idea of what adequate consultation looks like right here in Ontario?
It's been 20-some years that we've been trying to build a road to the Ring of Fire, not a mine. No, we're not talking about scarring all the landscape or anything. We're talking about building a road to it. We haven't got that far yet. There are no vetoes. But it's been more than 20 years, and we haven't been able to build a road. I'm kind of grouchy about that. There's something really, really wrong here. It's like all of these things that are Canada's natural advantages in the global economy, we raise our noses at and say, no, our parents worked hard so we wouldn't have to get our hands dirty. And I'm sorry, there's a million great paying jobs in mining. There's a lot of people I know who started off in university, dropped out, went into the trades, and are already retired and living quite well. But we look at it from Southern Ontario and say, oil? Why do we care about that? It's funding our hospitals, guys. Do you think the federal government would be able to make the transfer payments it makes to all these other provinces? We talk about the auto sector being huge for Ontario's economy and Canada's economy, and I think we have a good understanding of how important the auto sector is to Canada because we live here. Oil's 10 times that. The oil and natural gas, are 10 times that. And that comes out to equalization payments that are funding our schools, our hospitals. So, yeah, it's really nice to say we don't need your oil, but boy, oh boy, we need the money from it.
And that's not even talking about what's available and what resources can be extracted from the Ring of Fire.
Exactly. You know what I mean? We need it. Especially if our auto sector is in jeopardy.
I do not want to derail the other things you want to get to, but I can't help but think of a well-worn phrase during the election campaign. Canada is broken. Not in the ways that Mr. Poilievre was trying to portray necessarily, but this sounds broken to me, David.
Can we cue up Bob Dylan, Everything is Broken, to come back from the next break off with?
We can try. I think Devin Robertson might be up to it. David Drewe brings us Drew's Views every Monday morning at 11:30 on the Mike Farwell Show. What Stephen Harper era idea is coming back? You'll find out as we continue on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Devin Robertson, our guy on the other side of the glass, working turntables 1 and 2 today. Everything is broken, Bob Dylan. I've never been more bummed out, David. Jeez. David Drewe, owner, negotiating change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies, joins us every Monday morning, 11:30 for Drew's Views. I'm not really like that bummed out, but what a great bit of insight into how the sausage is made and why it takes so damn long to make it. So let's go back to what I said before the break and a Stephen Harper era idea that you see maybe reemerging right now.
Wob Canoe is putting forward as one of his national projects a year-round deep water port on James Bay in Manitoba. This was something that was in theory on the books. I shouldn't say on the books, that's overforward, but it was one of the aspirations that Stephen Harper would talk about as part of his Northern Sovereignty, Arctic Sovereignty strategies and aspirations. You and I were just talking about the break, about what happens if we do meet our Kyoto targets and, we're just no longer going to be putting more blankets on the bed, but all these blankets we've been adding to the bed for the past years are still going to be there. So we are going to have accessible Arctic water that was not there 10 years ago. And the idea of a resource corridor flowing, hydro, one way, oil, another way to that port, we are not only talking about resource development, we are not only talking about getting hydro out where it can displace natural gas and coal and oil in some other jurisdictions. We're also talking, though, about Arctic sovereignty and a port from which national defense could base some Navy potential. It comes together as a whole lot of national needs being solved with one project. And if that's not nation building, I don't know. Premier of New Brunswick is listing the Port of St. John as one of their nation building projects. It's not that I'm against it, but the idea of that versus what we are talking about for this northern port, gosh, it's infinitely more nation building. It's something that you could actually, it's like John A. MacDonald, and we're going to have a railroad from coast to coast. No, but this is that kind of nation building aspirational project that when you think about nation building, it clicks all the boxes. I have no idea if it's feasible or realistic or not. Port of St. John, well, yeah, that one's pretty much ready to go. I'm imagining it's going to get funded just because it's something where they can get shovels in the ground immediately and say, we're getting it done. Yeah, if they decide to go with what I'm talking about for this Northern Arctic port, though, that's not happening quickly. Doesn't mean it's not worth getting started on and fighting for. And once again, you get that corridor done. It's a one-time conversation, and you want to put a highway underneath it? No problem. You want to bury some fiber optic? No problem. You've already just decided this is the area where we can get development through.
Not lost on me is the fact that we're talking about an NDP premier in Manitoba, in Wob Canoe, resurrecting or reimagining this Conservative Prime Minister Harper's aspiration from a decade or two ago.
An Indigenous premier who says that there is enough community buy-in that it's worth the conversation. I don't think he's saying, hey, we're going to pave the road for you in gold and, just do it in the worst environmental way possible and stomp on the lands of this, that, or the other thing. But this conversation is going around in whispers long enough that if we can get the people to the table, the community, there might be enough buy-in. There's always NIMBYs. But can you imagine if we had a city of 30,000, 40,000 on James Bay and an active port with, icebreakers, subs.
It almost makes me giddy, David. I'm not even kidding. It's fantastic to think about the possibilities.
And we can get our oil to Europe and our natural gas to Europe. We don't need no stinking Quebec. Seriously.
Don't tell them that. They'll leave.
I'm not sure Anyway. But yes, we can get European access just as easily from James Bay as we can from St. John or Halifax. So we don't need to worry about the blocks in the middle, and it's almost as nation building.
Okay, I've really shorted you on time, but can you give me the 60-second Coles Notes version of why the upcoming G7 is already controversial?
Well, we have the president of South Korea coming. There's a whole bunch of countries coming that normally would not be, but most notable about it is Modi of India. And I want to circle back to what we were saying about there's a reason government does things slowly. So apparently the Liberal caucus was surprised by this invitation. And some of the Liberal caucus is not as on board with the idea of inviting the Prime Minister of India. And when they found out about it, it was through a reporter's query, and they answered honestly. There's a reason government does things slowly, and if this is just I want to invite somebody to a summit that I'm chairing, I should have slowed down and gone through caucus on. Imagine how the rest of it's going to go. But do I have time for one little...
20 seconds.
Okay. So Donald Trump says we're not a real country. And our response to that is to invite the guy we think is behind the murder of a Canadian on Canadian soil to a summit. Yeah, a way to show Donald Trump we're not a real country.
Only the good stuff with David Drewe. Monday mornings at 11:30, Drew's Views. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. There was a presentation made at Waterloo, Oxford Public School back in the fall of 2023. That presentation has made its way, at least parts of it, into the media of late, causing a good deal of concern in our community around the description of the word family and how it's being identified as harmful by our racialized students. We had the opportunity earlier today to talk with the Director of Education with our Waterloo Region District School Board, and we'll revisit that conversation as we get into our Rant or Rave Talkback Hour coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night.
Don't talk back.
Concerns have been raised about a presentation given to teachers at a local high school within our public school board. And we were able to have a conversation about it on the show earlier today. And I wanted to revisit that conversation now, just in case some may have missed it earlier. And wouldn't you know, during that news update with Matt Hutchison, when I checked my phone, a buddy had sent me the photo of the same slide from that presentation at a local high school that's been causing so much concern. So I think I might be onto something with the idea that maybe we can revisit this conversation so you can hear the public school board's answers on it. The slide in question is under the headline, Dismantling Whiteness at Waterloo, Oxford. Words matter. And the word that matters in this case is family, which, according to the slide in the presentation given to teachers at Waterloo, Oxford, has been identified as harmful by our racialized students. It values the positions of male authority and hierarchy. It implies a nuclear family structure, which is not the same for everyone. It asks for obedience with no room for questions or criticism, and it creates an expectation to prioritize families' needs and wants while sacrificing personal boundaries. That's what the slide reads that was presented, as we have since learned, to teachers at Waterloo, Oxford back in November of 2023. Scott Miller is the Director of Education with our Waterloo Region District School Board, the public school board here in the region. He joined the show earlier today, and the first question I asked him was, what was the purpose of that meeting at Waterloo, Oxford back in November of 2023?
Sure, and I think what I'd like to start with, Mike, is just one is certainly families, parents, caregivers are partners in education, and in my career, which is spanning close to 30 years now, that has just always been the case. So I first, how this was received, want to apologize to community, and if how they received it, and certainly the context that they received it within. I think those are important things just to start with, and have always appreciated the feedback, the engagement, and the support of our many families and parents and caregivers. That being said, the work at Waterloo Oxford was part of, and we've been doing work across our system, specifically on dismantling anti-Black racism, which has been a mandate of us from the Ministry of Education, as well as the Ontario Human Rights Commission. And in doing that work, what we have been starting to do is look at structures and ask questions and try to imagine certainly how our students experience mainly school. And in doing so, thinking about what does a nuclear family look like. And in doing so, just using that and that slide in particular that you referenced, a lot of those comments and the context that they're in is conversation points, with a recognition that certainly I can talk to my experience, that I grew up in a family, two parents, a sibling, much like maybe yourself and many others in our community, certainly throughout their lives. Realizing that our families now who are coming to our schools, they are experiencing family in many different ways. Some cases, they may come from a single-parent home. In other cases, they may be living with aunts and uncles. In other places, they may have situations where they're living with a step-parent and so forth. So that understanding of what family maybe was at one point to where we are now is just being able to really support our teaching staff and others to see students that are in front of them and how they show up at school and the experiences they have outside of school within what family might be for them.
What makes the word family harmful?
Quite honestly, Mike, I think families are something that certainly we should all appreciate, bring a lot of joy to our life. I would say that that word is not one that would cause harm. Certainly, in some cases, again, that context, and of course, I wasn't there for the presentation, but the thinking around what family may represent to some people, I think it's important to take that in context, because some people within their family environment would be in situations where maybe they are being harmed, or maybe there is an experience that certainly is something that even moves to things like abuse and others that some of our students may experience in that family context.
The board, Scott, has made it clear that this was a meeting that dates all the way back to November of 23, so almost 2 years ago now. Is the presentation still being made as part of a teacher's learning process?
What we've learned, Mike, certainly over time, and as we've engaged in this work, specifically looking at and dismantling racism in all its forms and ultimately in all of our schools, is a recognition that in some of our teachings previously, in language that's been used, it really made it difficult for people who are receiving that learning to engage. And in some cases, that sense of this feeling, and I'll say certainly from our white staff, that they would step back and worry and have some concern and potentially even fear or want to defend that that's not who I am and so forth. So what we really strive to do is, as we have looked at our professional learning, how we're engaging in any of our anti-racism work, is how are we providing opportunities that allow people to make a connection, that allow our staff to engage in conversation that will allow them to see a different perspective, to see a different way, while at the same time really being learners and really trying to take that emotion away in some cases, because people who enter those learning spaces with high emotion really aren't in a place to learn. And we recognize that some of the language that people will hear whenever we're talking about racism, and that it will be something that does allow for high emotion. And so how we've shifted our work in that we're trying to find different ways to allow people to come into that conversation, while at the same time recognizing the need and the urgency to make changes to some of our systems so all of our students can truly be successful and achieve at their highest level.
Just based on the questions that have been asked of us as a media outlet, Scott, and so we can be clear about this, the main question is around the use of the word family and whether or not that's still acceptable in our public school system. Can the word family still be used by teachers, students, others in the public school system?
Oh, absolutely, Mike. The family is vital and important to all the work that we do, and so absolutely that is a word that we actually want to celebrate and appreciate the many families we get to work with every day. And again, if that was the message that people have taken from this, that is, apologize for that. In fact, that every day we hope to celebrate families and engage with them, knowing that when we're working closely with families, parents, and caregivers, that our students are going to thrive and be able to achieve at a level at their highest level.
Does the board follow up with the teachers who received this presentation to understand how they felt about it and what they took away from it?
Yeah, certainly. That is a process actually we're going through right now. But I will say that these presentations such as that and our continued learning, specifically around work around dismantling anti-Black racism, or as I say, racism in general across our system. This is ongoing work. That wouldn't have been just one opportunity to engage in human rights and equity work. So ultimately, those teachers would have had greater opportunities to engage in dialogue and so forth. So that's not an isolated presentation. We know that this work has to be ongoing. And certainly one opportunity, and at a staff meeting in particular, is a short opportunity to begin this conversation. So those teachers would have had other opportunities to engage. And certainly, to your point, it's something that we will be following up on. And just seeing where people are at. And already there's been conversations started with Waterloo Oxford in particular.
Scott Miller is the Director of Education with our Waterloo Region District School Board, the public board here in the region of Waterloo. Joins us to provide some clarity and context around a slide from a presentation almost 2 years ago that's begun making the rounds in media. And clearly, the teacher or teachers who leaked said slide were not exactly enthusiastic about the subject matter, where the word family was described as harmful. Sean tags me on X at Farwell_WR. Paraphrasing from your guest, people are going into those spaces with high emotions and won't be ready to learn. So maybe stop using aggressive language around whiteness and family, implying they're inherently bad. It's one way to look at it for sure. I don't understand why it's so hard for these people to not put their feet in their mouths over and over again. That was Sean's take, and since we didn't get a lot of time to discuss it earlier, and I know it's of concern in the community, I thought we could revisit the conversation here in our Talkback Hour. Open phone lines for your thoughts on that issue and more on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. And let's get right to the phones on this Monday edition of Talkback, Rant or Rave. We can discuss the conversation we just revisited about a presentation given at Waterloo Oxford Public School about dismantling whiteness in the school community and across the board, or anything else that happens to be on your mind. We'll start with Mike. Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon, Mike. I saw that post that was very unclear on Facebook regarding this issue. I never thought that the provincial government should have power over a school board, and I am so glad they've introduced that new legislation that will allow the provincial government to come in and take over school boards or direct them to do something. I have never seen such, I will use the word nonsense. You can't use the word family. I watched a school board meeting a couple months ago. You can't use the word parent. You can't, you got to use caretaker. And it's based on some obscure human rights code, which the Human Rights Committee organization has not even ruled on yet. I think our Waterloo Regional District School Board has got to get out of the human rights code business and ruling and believing they are the Human Rights Commission of Ontario, and they need to start focusing on education. Like, are we spending our taxpayers' money figuring out whether family, parent, or whatever is bad? Like, Mike, come on. These people need to give their head a shake, and they need to get focus on real issues, not on this weird stuff that they're doing. I'm also greatly disturbed when I watch these school board meetings. Each of them have stickers on the back of their laptops with their various cause du jour. In most legislatures, you're not even allowed to use props, demonstrations, or anything on there. It intimidates people who have either an opposing position on something if you see a sticker opposing your position when you come to a school board. They should be neutral.
All right, Mike, I appreciate your call. And listen, I will say this. The presentation in question goes back to 2023. I give Scott Miller and the Public School Board today a ton of credit for coming forward to try to provide some clarity around this. I think there is a concerted effort here to distinguish the current regime from the previous regime. And we all know, well, I wish we knew more about how the previous or why the previous regime ended. But nonetheless, I give the board credit for coming out and having this conversation because it is a difficult one, right? I certainly understand, and I learned in elementary school, that my family dynamic, mom, dad, siblings, all under one roof, wasn't necessarily the norm. There were kids that came from what we called broken homes back then. I learned that in elementary school. The connection where we're trying to connect it to whiteness, white supremacy, racism, et cetera, becomes difficult. And those are uncomfortable conversations, to be sure. And I think what the public board is doing now is working on making those conversations more clear and a little bit more open. I give them credit for where they're at. Where that came from, though, is a very curious place for sure. Carol, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I wanted to talk about perhaps letting the rest of the community know of a problem with garlic allergy, especially in an age where there's more takeout food, delivered food, restaurant food that a lot of us are taking advantage of. And there's very little that they don't put garlic in these days.
Okay, so if you have a garlic allergy, does that mean you just stay away from those foods?
That's right.
Okay. So I guess
makes it nearly impossible to find something good to eat somewhere.
Well, I can certainly understand that. If man, I love me some garlic. I'm sorry to hear about that allergy. And yeah, I guess it just means that many more careful food choices. Rant or Rave continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Right back to the phones we go. Dave is with us. Good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon, Mike. I'll be very quick. I have a quick positive comment in regards to your negative comment earlier this morning.
What negative comment? Dave.
I'll get to it.
Okay.
And then I have two positive shout-outs, so I'll be real quick and then I'll hang up as usual. My positive comment is in regards to what you said about robotic deliveries. And I'm a lot older than you are, Mike. I'm a senior. And I think on face value, I would accept it. And secondly, the issue of assaults and robberies, I think that addresses it in good part. Now, there's two shout-outs. The first shout-out, and I'm going to use an old comment that will bring back music to your ears, but it's not used anymore. And that is the positive news about the Fold. And that is in regards to the Kitchener Rangers with the recent hiring of that player. And the reason why I'm so shout out and positive about it is that we are ahead of the Maple Leafs in regards to any positive news right now.
All right. Did you say you had a second shout out?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I need you to wait till after the news. Can you do that for me?
No, real quick.
Real quick. Dave, I'm already out of time.
Go Oilers, go.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Don't make fun of my Leafs, buddy. Rant or Rave continues on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio, Rogers TV. On Mondays, Talkback is reserved for your rants and or raves. Right back to the phones. Grant, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. I guess I wouldn't make a good teacher because I would be saying family, family, family.
It's okay. You are still allowed to say family.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't. Okay. Yeah, that when you brought that up in the beginning, I was a little confused, but...
well, that's why we're here, to try to end the confusion or at least try to limit it.
And do you wonder how that little fella is doing? I think it was Owen. His mother came on the line just a week after the jackpot was given out. But anyways,
wait. What? Who?
Owen.
Owen. His mother came on the show?
Came on the show telling you about her son, 5 months old or 5 years old, that had CF.
I'm sorry, Grant. I remember talking about Emma. And I do remember Sarah phoning in, and I think that was Omar was the child's name, and it was he was just 5 weeks old. It was brand new baby boy.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that he's doing well. And
okay.
I was wondering if you could find out. I've checked online, and I can't figure out why they closed up 126 Chinese food. It was.
Well, maybe you were the only one going there.
They were really good because I would ask for less salt, and they would do it for me. And
well, Grant, you know what? I'll tell you what. Cameron's is pretty good, and so is May King. We always called it My King as a kid, but I think it's May King on the corner of Victoria and Margaret. And that's just my humble estimation. If I'm honest, as much as I eat things in general, I'm a big fan of food. I don't often do Chinese, but I'm sorry, 126 Chinese. I'm sorry they closed it on you. I wish I had the answers to all of the questions, but sadly it would have been a business decision well out of my hands and control. We'll go to JB next. JB, you're going to save me today, right?
I hope so.
I hope so too, buddy.
I'm honestly really frustrated with Grand River Transit.
Oh, boy. You know, I'm not even a regular. I'm a very irregular, infrequent rider, but so am I.
Well, okay, so this is what's happened, and I mean, you and I have some catch up to do off air, but so I've lost a part of my vision and have to ride the bus now. I'm not allowed to drive anymore, and thankfully, there's programs and services that I can take advantage of where transit is supported and supplied to me, but that means I have to use transit for my kids. I have to pay for their stuff. My daughter is a teenager and is going into high school next year. They don't have a reduced rate like they did when I was in high school, so she's going to have to pay the same $104 a month. Well, she being, her mom and I, having to pay the same $104 a month for her to have a pass. And this whole thing about increasing cash fares to $4 from $3.75. Why are we more expensive than Toronto for a much crummier service? What is going on here? And as a regular rider, I can tell you it's not like the ridership's down. Ridership is very much up. The LRT is almost always full. All the main line routes are almost always full. Sure, there's a few routes that aren't as full as they should be, but they've taken measures to kind of reduce them. Like the number 5 that runs down Herb Street West barely runs on Sundays, if at all. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's not like ridership's down.
JB, listen, I feel your pain, and I understand where you're coming from. The stats show, though, in fact, ridership is down. This is where my concern lies with Grand River Transit right now. A 16.5% decrease in ridership in the first quarter of this year. So the planned expansions for service are being scaled back, and the service is trying to save more than $1.3 million because of this reduction in ridership that it has noticed in the first quarter of this year. Then you hear James talk about the student rate no longer being existed. This Affordable Transit Program, or the ATP, is an effort to income test, means test transit. But seniors have said, we're getting left right out of this because the process is way too cumbersome for us and we don't have the digital literacy to take advantage of it. So a group that I think should be rewarded or offered discounted, if not free transit, like some other municipalities do, is being underserved by our system. And all of this is happening against the backdrop of what Cambridge Mayor Jan Liggett said about a month ago, late April, at a Cambridge council meeting when they were talking about phase 2 of light rail transit. And Mayor Liggett informed Cambridge Council that she had just come from a regional council meeting where it was for the first time stated that rapid bus transit is now an option on the table for the next level of transit service to the city of Cambridge if the federal and provincial governments don't come through with funding for light rail trains. And so you've got a service that's showing declining ridership, decreasing levels of service, and you might potentially be selling that service to residents of Cambridge as the next best thing since sliced bread for transit. Eesh, from where I'm sitting. I don't like the looks of it. Mark, you're on Talkback. Rant or rave, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. A couple of quick things for you. First of all, I got a rave. I like the new acquisition for the Rangers.
Adam Valentini, baby.
Absolutely. I think it's going to work out, Mike.
I think it will, too.
Okay, secondly, Mike, how do you like your new quarterback?
I don't want to talk about it, Mark.
Mike, come on.
I'm telling. Here's exactly what I said to my beloved. She's been trying so hard. She's the sweetest girl. She's been trying so hard to make me look at this positively. Here's what I said to her. I'm coming off a season as a hockey fan where my Maple Leafs let me down again, and I'm going into a football season as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan where my team and my quarterback are the laughingstock of the league. That's how I feel. It's embarrassing.
Mike, did they give him a 1 year or a 2 year?
I don't know. I don't care. If they give him a 1 day contract, it's too many.
Okay. All righty, Mike. Thanks.
All right, Mark. Thanks for rubbing it in. Aaron Rodgers. What? You couldn't find somebody at the old age home? Come on with your coming on. It's Rant or Rave on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. And it continues with a phone call next from Nathaniel. Good afternoon, Nathaniel.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I would like to rant about, I frequently drive past this business. As you very well know, it's Pride Month this month. I can't stop. I won't complain about businesses flying the Pride flag, but I will complain about them taking down the Canadian flag to put the Pride flag in place. In my view, it's totally unacceptable. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for the call. I believe the protocol is 1 flag per pole. So I guess if they only have the one, they just swap it out for the month. And you object to that, and your objection is noted. Dylan, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Sorry, I just joined at lunch here, so I might have missed it. But with that teacher conference, everyone was up in arms about the word family, yet the name of the conference was anti-whiteness. Is that correct?
Dismantling whiteness.
Oh, dismantling.
Dismantling.
Whiteness.
Yes.
Is that not a term or a name that should be frowned on? Like, is every white child that attends public school, supposed to shoulder guilt because of the color of their skin? I just don't understand how racism works. Like, why don't we just treat everyone as equal? I thought that was the whole idea, yet we have to dismantle whiteness? Does this make sense?
On some levels in my research, yes, Dylan, but I don't think any of this is coming across well at all. And I will add to that, when I asked Scott Miller what makes the word family harmful, he struggled to come up with an answer for that. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that point. So I hear where you're coming from, and I'm with you for the most part.
Okay, yeah, it really caught me off guard knowing that mentioned the name of the conference being Out to Lunch.
I get you. Okay, thanks, Dylan. So here's what I have learned, and believe you me, I am still learning. But if we think back in history, okay, to the settlers that first settled and built the nation that we continue to enjoy and are proud of today, and most of us still are very much proud of this nation that we call Canada. It was a bunch of white people. It's as simple as that. To put it as simply as we can, white people built it. And so every single structure, every single institution that was created by people who look a whole lot like me. And mostly were men, too. Let's just be honest about that, okay? So when we talk today about dismantling whiteness, that's the sort of thing that we're talking about. Now, I believe, and I believe firmly, that we have begun that work without being so explicit about it. And we began that work many, many decades ago. We still have work to do, absolutely. But I understand why this particular presentation and the language used within it was highly emotionally charged language. Because when you talk about it like that and you bring in words like family as being problematic, people are going to get their dander up. And I think there's probably a better way of getting the message across that I just shared. If I got that across well, that's my understanding. That's what I've been learning. So these are the systems and the structures that we are trying to break down. But again, I believe we have been breaking them down for quite some time already. That's from where I sit. And there are guaranteed to be some, including whomever it was that gave that presentation at Waterloo, Oxford a couple of years ago, don't feel like we've done enough or are doing enough today, hence the need to continue dismantling whiteness. And here we are having the conversation. And it doesn't work well when it's that polarizing. Bob, over to you, rant or rave.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Bob.
I hope you had a good weekend.
I had a great weekend. The weather was fantastic.
That's good. I just want to say I'm so glad that we voted, the Liberals got in up here, because we're not taking the same route as they are down in the States. I mean, things are so much better since Donald Trump got in, isn't it? I mean, Putin's following the line, and there's so much peace in the U.S., it's just hard to believe one man could do all that.
I sense your sarcasm, Bob. It's a whole new America.
We're troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
It's about law and order, says the President of the United States, as the National Guard was called in to quell some protests in Los Angeles. Vehicles on fire, people blocking freeways, and a great deal of unrest south of the border. Rant or Rave continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Right back to the phones for more of your rants and or raves. Walter, good afternoon.
Good afternoon there, Mike. Mike, I have a question for you. Are you a rhubarb fan?
Oh,
do you like rhubarb?
I love me some rhubarb, Walter. I sure do.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I just finished a piece of rhubarb pie here, and I was thinking about it, and I didn't know whether you'd like it or not.
Why are you rubbing this in? What is this all about? Is this call Farwell and tease 'em day? I just had some rhubarb pie. What are you doing there in the studio with your glass of water?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that water will change to something else after 1 o'clock, I'm sure. So, also, I was out kayaking on the weekend because it was so nice out on the Speed River over by Blackbridge area, and I got to tell you, I was amazed at the wildlife that's happening around on the riverbanks over there, in the river itself, and as it flows down into Hespeler. And I really enjoyed it. Like we have kayaks up north, but we bought, I actually bought a couple that are those blow-up type, and hit the river down there for the first time, and I really enjoyed it. And also, Mike, on your Pittsburgh Pirates signing there, I think on their logo they should be wearing a patch over both eyes after this.
No, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they don't have patches on their eyes. They have the Three Rivers and Steeltown on their logo.
Well, I just wanted to see how close you were paying attention.
Don't mix metaphors. Go away.
Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, buddy, and I'll talk again.
Thanks, Walter. I think Walter had something more than just rhubarb pie a moment ago. Like, did that make sense to anybody, or do I have to be drunk to understand that call? I love you, Walter, and I'm glad you were out enjoying. This is something that's underappreciated, and I will quickly and shamelessly plug something that's coming up on the show tomorrow, which is Kitchener's new parks plan. And before you roll your eyes, oh, who cares about a parks plan? Think about downtown, Kitchener specifically, the way it's growing up. Where do we have the green space to support all of the people that are now living in the core? And how well used is our outdoor space today anyway? I think it's very well used, and Walter just gives an indication of it. So we'll be talking about that on the show tomorrow. Tom, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. I'm calling to, all the talk is how we're going to build a pipeline. Nobody wants a pipeline.
I want a pipeline.
Okay, well.
Am I somebody or am I nobody?
No.
Okay.
It's in general. It's like the reason you have these, we have one and it's not being used. Biden cut us the gas. They don't want it in California. And I'm saying the biggest thing right now is our fires. They're getting out of control for provinces. You're getting smoke all over, even to Europe, and this should be our priority.
You know what, Tom? I'm glad you brought that up, because just as we're winding down the show, it gives me the chance to shamelessly self-promote again, something coming up on the show tomorrow. What about the idea of a national wildfire fighting service, or a national fire service that would be called upon in instances just like this? We're working on the parks plan for Kitchener and how we make use of green space or create green space where we're putting more and more people in housing. And we're working on a conversation about a national fire service, which is an idea, by the way, goes back a couple of years, and it seems like a better and better idea every day, doesn't it? So that's coming up on the show tomorrow as well. I'll tell you what, I'll be back here tomorrow morning at 9. Hope you'll join me. Rob Snow and Now You Know is coming up. My name is Mike Farwell. Bye for now.